Family and marriage. Family and marriage are the basic units of the society. It is also an institution that is considered as a seat of nurturing, care, and socialization of an individual. It is also supposed to be an institution that protects a person from the threats of the outside world. Person from threats of outside world. But on a closer look with patriarchal background and gender lens, the institution of family is found not to be an egalitarian but hierarchical structure. Not to be an egalitarian but a hierarchical structure. Hierarchical structure. In this unit, you will read about how family can be a seat of power and subordination and oppression of some members, namely women, girl child, and also of the members of the non-normative sexuality. Non-normative. Along with the understanding family marriage as an institution, we will discuss the different kinds of discrimination inherent to the marriage. It should be stressed that marriage by itself, as that is understood today, wasn't isn't a universal system in terms of time, space, and communities, and how the patriarchal and the sacramental nature of the marriage. Sacramental nature of marriage keeps the woman subordinated and perpetuates violence against them. Various studies from across the world have elaborated upon the nature and the functions of the family. Majority of these studies emphasize on the universality of the family as a social institution that in provides socialization, support, love, and protection to its members. These studies portray family as an egalitarian space where all members enjoy equal patronage and love, and consider it as equal patronage and love. And consider it as a heaven, otherwise insecure in the violent world. However, there are studies which challenge such unilateral understanding of the family. These studies come mainly from the feminist and queer scholar. They bring forth the ways in which family operates within the family, determining differential access to resources, both material and non-material. Violence and discrimination are used as tools to maintain family integrity, status, power, and honor. Let us read about the functionalism, which is important to study family as a form of social institution. We have functionalism. It says that family forms the basic institution of every society and is universal in nature. Through its various functions, family meets the function prerequisite of the society and helps maintain its equilibrium. This study is based on the understanding that the biological imperative motherhood predisposes women for indoor work, whereas the greater physical strength of men leads them naturally into the provider role. The most basic relationship within the family is that of the mother and the child, based on the physiological facts for pregnancy and lactation. Therefore, the mother is primarily responsible for rearing and the nurturance of the child, whereas the father plays an indirect role. Functionalists propose that the wife is required to give direct help to the husband. Work she is expected to adjust and assist the husband in meeting the various demands of occupational spheres placed on the him. Talcott Parsons is the most prominent proponent of the functionalist theories. According to Parsons, family is the basic agent of the socialization, and every member of the society derives their role and status from their position in the family. Parsons also described that a nuclear family is the best form of family for an industrialized world. A nuclear family is the wives and the male responsible for raising children and not expected to hunt for ascribed status, and children are not grown up for competition. Therefore, the authority and the ascribed status of the husband is not threatened, thereby maintaining the stability of the family and the society. Feminist studies critique functionalism, bringing forth the various ways in which the power operates within the family, leading to the hierarchy, discrimination, and violence. against various members. They show family as not just a space for love, peace, and cooperation, but also the conflict, balance, and the negotiation. Then we have the feminist perspectives. Family as an indispensable social institution based on the cooperation, harmony, common interest, and equality. To a large extent, they also have taken man with the family as a basic unit of the study and have neglected women's experiences. Feminism challenged this vision of the family and drew attention to examine experience of the woman in a domestic sphere. Then we have the liberal feminism. It argues that the woman and men are different not due to their biology but due to the process of sex role socialization. They recognize that through sexual socialization, women taught to be primarily housewife and thus are prevented from realizing their full potential. This relegated women to the so-called private sphere of the family, make them dependent upon their husband, which lead to their subordination. They demand equal opportunity for women in all spheres, as they believe that women are capable of achieving anything as much as men. They argue that this equality can be achieved by bringing women out of the domestic sphere through the equal opportunity for jobs, which can be brought by the legislation and the social reforms. Betty Friedan, Anne Oakley, Suzanne Okin-Moller are among the many liberal feminists who have studied the family and women's position within it. Betty Friedan, Anne Oakley, Suzanne Okin-Moller. Socialist feminism. According to Marxist feminist, women's subordination is related to socialist feminism. Related to the ownership of property, they argue that family, along with the exploitation of women, will be wiped out with the usurping of the capitalism. Socialist families contest such ideas and point out ways in which even the working class male benefits from the family. They point at the ways in which the structure of the family in the capitalism affects and appropriates women labor and renders them unequal both within the family and in the labor market. Then we have the radical feminism. It emphasizes on the sexual rather than the economic exploitation. They link women expression to their sexually reproductive role performed basically within the family. They call upon women to reject their biological reproductive role and take the help of technology to subvert male domination. Some of the important radical feminist analysis for family comes from the Kate Millett, Shulamit Firestone, and others. It emphasizes on the sexual rather than the economic exploitation. They link women's oppression to the sexual and the reproductive role performed basically within the family. Kate Millett unites that the patriarchal family insists upon legitimacy of offspring. It pronounces that the status of the both the child and mother is chiefly dependent upon the social and economic status of the male. Shulamit Firestone in the book The Dialectic of the Sex opines that the material basis for the inequality between man and woman is produced within the biological family. The dialectic of the when we have the feminist studies of family, the scholarship began by pointing to the wide gap between the everyday experience of the woman within the family and anthropological, sociological knowledge available. Therefore, the immediate task that they undertook was to underline the invisibility of the woman in the existing studies. Much feminist work has targeted the family in terms of the structure of marriage, unequal distribution of resources between men and women, and the and gender division of labor. They argue that women face discrimination in access to health, education, food, and clothing, son preferences within the family, domestic violence, and many other such issues occurring within the family structure. We have the critique of mainstream research. Feminists pointed out that the early Indian sociologists, for all purposes, assumed the Hindu joint family of the classical Sanskritic usage as the Indian family. It excluded the family structure and kinship, idols, and the practices of the non-Hindus that of the South and Northeast India, lower caste of the non-patrilineal communities, and the others. They thus ignored the various ways in which different kinship patterns in different regions and communities affected the lives of its members, especially that of women differently. It was only the work of the Iravati Karve in which she undertook a comparative study on the kinship and marriage in the North and South Indian families that some light has been thrown on differential pattern of kinship and its effect on its members, especially that of women. Thus, mainstream studies feminists argued failed to inform or confront practical challenge related to the institution of family in the India and wrongly portrayed it as an egalitarian and a harmonious institution benefiting all. We have the familial ideology and the woman's subordinate status. Scholars focused on the violence perpetrated on the woman in the name of the family honor and showed how the rationality of the family honor subordinates women and grants men the power to exercise control on women's self and sexuality. Family honor and the purity of caste is believed to be dependent upon the control over and the purity of female sexuality. Family, according to the feminists, plays an important role in the maintaining this purity through socializing its members, especially women, to control their sexuality. Girls are expected to be feminine and then not attract male gaze to remain pure. Family itself controls and punishes arbitrary behavior in this regard. Restrictions on the mobility, maintaining parda, stress on virginity, chastity, and the fidelity stigma of the illegitimacy, importance on early marriage. Girls are all mechanisms through which family actively contributes in maintaining the caste boundaries and protect its purity and the honor. The responsibility for protection of the family and cause honor that the family confers its male members gives men the right to exercise power over the females. Another such aspect of the oppressive family structure that was neglected by the mainstream studies was the process of gender socialization, which forms one of the basic functions of the family. Feminists argue that the mainstream studies did not critique the gender nature of the process of socialization because mainstream scholars agreed with the patriarchal ideology and saw nothing wrong in its reproduction. Feminists argue that the process of gender socialization in India primarily takes place through rituals and the ceremonies. The use of language and practices within the family, gender division of labor is ingrained in the children very early in the childhood. Little girls are expected to help in the domestic work such as cooking and looking after infants. Boys, on the other hand, are reprimanded if they show any interest in the above works. Re- reprimanded. They are expected to accompany their male elders to work outside the home. Girl feminist studies shows are expected to learn to bear the pain and deprivation, eat anything that is given to them, and acquire the quality of self-sacrifice. Feminists also point out that given the fact that son preference is ingrained in the Indian families, which are largely patriarchal, patrilineal, and the patriarchal in nature, girls grow up with the notion of temporary and secondary membership within the natal home. Then the Rajni Palriwala addresses household within the context of women's work. She argues that such division of labor kept women away from the market-oriented income-generating productive work, thus making women economically dependent on the men. Dalit feminists thought on the queer theory. Dalit feminist critics of the family studies. Feminism in India assumed that the experience of the Hindu upper caste, middle class, urban woman to the experience of the all women. Dalit Bahujan critique look took Indian feminists to task for the seeming invisibility of the caste inequality and emphasize on the politics of the differences. Dalit Bahujan feminists argue that this difference is essential for understanding the Dalit women's subjugation. Quickly cautioned Indian feminists' negligence of the role of soul sexuality played in determining the family form and the unequal distribution of the power within. They argued against feminist non-questioning of the heteronormativity. According to queer critics, feminists question gender roles, subordination of women, violence against women, unequal rights to property and decision making, and the others within the family. Renchen 2005 rights within the family violence is seen as a serious concern but never as a threat to the validity, relevance, and the existence of the institution itself. According to her, members of the family are burdened within the duty of the replicating the structure. Families are also not open for any and everyone as the gates of the entry at the birth and marriage. The use of force and violence for submission and the compliance is not unknown. Domestic violence. Sex selection of the female infanticide aborting girl children even before birth is a pattern of violence largely perpetrated in the Indian society. Even before the female's baby is born, she is killed inside her mother's womb by abortion. The decline female male sex ratio over last few decades confirmed this fact with the spread of the amniocentesis, a medical technique to recover birth defects which involves the extermination of the fetus. Female infanticide has become a common form of violence against women. Female feticide and infanticide are often the manifestation of a dominant ideology which valorizes the male child. The desire for a male child is linked to the Hindu belief that the sun facilitates the passage of his parents to the next world. This belief, along with the conception of son being the provider and the daughter being an economic burden, is the cause for increasing female feticides and infanticide. Unequal access to facilities and resources. The dominant ideology assumes that the girls are inferior physically and the mentally weak and above all sexually vulnerable. Based on this discrimination and restrictions are imposed upon the girl child, distribution of the basic resources within the family is regulated along the factors of the gender and age. These basic resources include nutrition, healthcare, education, other material assets, as well as the parental attentive and care. Evidence indicates that the girls and women are usually far less privileged than boys in access to material resources. The male child gets the larger share in food and girl child gets only leftover. Forms of the discrimination in access to food exist even in the upper caste middle class homes, indicating that the factors other than scarcity are crucial. Here we have the child abuse. Children are victims of the substantial abuse of a physical, psychological, and the emotional nature. This includes sexual aggression, beatings, as well as extracting hours of the labor from children who should be in school or at play. Given her burden of the household duty, it is a girl who is abused more. She experiences on a daughterhood and is deprived of the carefree childhood, which is generally reserved for boys. Child sexual abuse is one of the most rampant forms of child abuse, which is rarely talked about. Families rarely talk about such sexual abuse when the rapist is the father, brother, uncle, or the cousin. The chances of the reporting are even lower. Though the girl child is more vulnerable to sexual abuse, especially in the Indian context, one cannot deny the prevalence of the male child. If there is a silence around the sexual violation of the girl child in the family, this is equally true of cases of the sodomy and abuse of male child. Sexual harassment also occurs in the domestic sphere. Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and the other verbal or the physical conduct of a sexual nature constitute sexual harassment. It forms one of the basic tools of men to keep women in their patriarchal defined space. It can be in the form of comments on the physical appearance of the female and abuse with sexual overtone. Ringing, jostling against women, manhandling, ogling, etc. It creates an atmosphere of fear and hurts the dignity of the woman concerned. Assault or rape. Rape is broadly defined as non-consensual sexual act through the use of physical force, threats, or intimidation, including the rape of a woman by husband, which is marital rape. Rape may also occur between people who know each other and between people who have previously had consensual sexual relations. Unlike common belief that it is committed in the dark streets by ugly and the fearful looking stranger, most of the rapes happen within the four walls of the home by the family members, acquaintances, neighbors, cousins, and other close relatives. Violence against aged persons and the widows, a situation of dependency on the younger generation results in the neglect and in the some cases the ill treatment differ. Forms of violence against older people, in particular women, widows, and aged persons, are usually economically dependent upon their relatives. On the way, therefore, they are more vulnerable to the violence by their family members, who include in laws, son, daughter in law, and other relatives. Widowhood exposes a woman to new forms and networks of the exploitation and the violence. In patriarchal society, they are considered a curse and an evil woman on their moment is restricted in the various ways. Sexual vulnerability of the widow is widely prevalent. They are prone to sexual abuse within the marital family, are sometimes forced into prostitution by their in-laws. Heteronormativity and therefore any deviation from such norm leads to discrimination, violence. Traditionally, children born as transsexual called as hijras are abandoned by the family or killed in the form of infanticide. Homosexuality is unaccepted and the violence, including life-threatening consequences, is used as a tool to bring confrontation. Rape is used to cure daughters of homosexuality and make lesbians confirm heterosexuality. Homosexual men and women are forced into heterosexual marriages and threatened of the dire consequences if do not conform. The above forms of violence reflects the power of the various ways in which the different members of the family live a life of hierarchy and unequal power and the status. Marriage is traditionally considered to be a socially legal recognized relationship between an adult male and female. Marriage brings with it the certain rights and obligations. According to Anthony Giddens, marriages can be defined as a socially acknowledged and the approved sexual union between the adult individuals. When two people marry, they become kin to one another. The marriage bond also, however, connects together a wider range of kin people, parents, brothers, sisters, and other blood relatives become relatives of the partner through marriage. It is about only opposite gender, a man and a woman, being allowed to marry. Same sex marriage is tabooed and not allowed socially and legally except a few countries which grant legal sanction to such marriages. Couples from the same sex, as shown in the picture, a woman and a woman love are not allowed to marry. Same sex couple, like in this picture, a man and marrying is tabooed. In India, too, same sex love and marriage is tabooed and banned both by society and the law. It is believed that at the basis of almost every kinship system is marriage. It is a social or a binding legal text banning the union of a man and a woman. Living together in a sexual relationship with the expectation of producing offspring, this relation is defined and sanctioned by the tradition and law. Traditionally, marriage involves a man, a woman, and their children. One of the important purposes of marriage is believed to be for the biological reproduction. It needs to be amended as men and women do not necessarily include having children as one of the purposes of marriage. In certain societies, couples reproduce even without entering into marriage, and they may or may not choose to marry. There are couples who enter into marriage but choose to be childless or offer adoption rather than have their own biological children. Whereas same-sex partners are entering into marriage, such couples may go for the adoption, medical inception, other scientific and legal methods to include children in the family. Thus, the importance of marriage no longer remains exclusively attached to the notion of the biological reproduction, but is also undertaken for the purpose of companionship. It is divided into the monogamy and the polygamy. One man marrying one woman is monogamy. Polygamy is a term of plural marriage. Term for plural marriage. It can in turn be subdivided into polyandry, and the polygamy. It is a one woman with more than one man. And polygyny or the union of the one man with several women. One man and then the several women. Group marriage involves several even living with several women. With polygamy. Polygamy is more common than the polyandry. Marriage takes place in the two broad forms, that is the endogamy and exogamy. Endogamy ensures that the endogamy and exogamy. It ensures that the partner in the marriage belong to the same social group, same caste, tribe, religion, class, and others. In India, Hindu social order towards caste system strictly followed and continues to follow caste endogamy. Any violation of it entailed punishment, including what is known as the honor killing. Endogamy and the violent enforcement of it continues rather rigidly in the contemporary times. Such honor killing are perpetrated when the caste and endogamous rules of the marriage are challenged by the younger couples. That is, hypergamous marriage is the woman belong to a lower caste and the man to the higher. If the marriage of the high caste to a lower caste one is called the hypogamy. The Indian society, hypergamous marriage is relatively easily accepted as compared to the hypogamous marriages. Hypogamous marriages. Hypergamous. Hypergamous marriages often lead to violence against the caste group to which the man belongs by the upper caste group to which the woman belongs. On the other hand, it is that individuals marry outside their own group. Expected and the village exogamy entails the members that married outside the one's village are some among the various forms of exogamy. Exogamy of the Gotra rules can also lead to honor killings. Based on sex of the partners, marriage can be up to two kinds, that is heterosexual and the homo. Belongs to the opposite sex, homo is the same sex. Women are socialized into acceptance of the feminine domestic roles in marriage, which makes them good and respectable wives. Gender socialization is the whereby girls are told that their task is to cook, clean, and perform repetitive, uncreative work. Uncreative work. In the second shift, they go for work outside home. They are paid much less than men. There is continuity between the woman's subordination within the private sphere of the marriage and family and the public sphere of wage work. Further research also show that even when women go out to work in similar positions as men, they are still burdened with the housework, performing second shift. One shift at office, another taking care of home and the family by doing housework. They are advocating of the gender division of the labor in manner harms the position of women as a whole, mildly by constraining their options and ambition, conforming them to domestic sphere and placing on them the exclusive burden of housework. Gender division of the labor limits women's choices and their life chances. They become economically, socially, and politically dependent on men, hampering their self confidence, forcing them to tolerate discrimination and violence. Thus, gender division of the labor. It is the exploitative system of the private property. For radical families, marriage is a tool of patriarchy which, through its heterosexual norms, keeps women subordinated. Patriarchy is the first form of social exploitation in the system. Patriarchy, men as the group hold power over women. According to feminists, marriage is a hierarchical institution whereby women are given secondary status, gender, and division of labor. Capitalist economy, unpaid housework, unequal wage system, in paid work, heterosexual norms, control over women's sexuality, eulogizing of the masculinity and femininity, eulogizing. Marital violence can be perpetrated both in the active and the passive manner. It can be an overt and covert manner, can be physical and the psychological. Beating with the hand or stick here by cutting her body, abusing her with the language. Early marriage is encouraged to control the sexuality of the girl. She should be passed safely from a natal to the marital without bringing in danger to her family name. In early pregnancy, dowry is an age-old practice related to the marriage in India. It is the exchange of wealth, especially from the bride's home to the groom's. It can be in the form of the cash, ornaments, lands, modern gadgets, or other movable and the immovable property. Dowry forms one of the major cause of wife battering. They are beaten, deserted, tortured, murdered, burned for extracting more. Wife battering is most widely practiced and widely denied form of domestic violence is upon the wife that sometimes lead to the death of the woman. It is a wife battering. Wife battering involves physical, psychological, and sexual abuse, inflicted complex social phenomena of power relationships within the family. Marital rape is commonly defined as any unwanted intercourse or penetration obtained by the force, threat of force, or when the wife is unable to consent. Rape in marriage is a sexual violence and abuse of power by which a husband attempts to establish dominance and control over his wife, who he feels is his property. For a long time, most of these violences were not even legislated against by the law. It is mostly through the efforts of the women's movement that today most of these forms of violence are declared illegal through legislations. In many societies, divorce has become an accepted part of marriage. All legal systems today grant the right to divorce to both women and men in marriage. Divorce laws have become simpler with the granting of the mutual consent divorces. Though divorce status is considered as normal in many societies, in India it is still difficult to offer divorce, especially for women. India has different marriage and divorce laws for the different religions. Almost all religions have their own marriage and divorce laws. Grounds for divorce in India mainly include adultery, desertion, cruelty, impotency, chronic diseases, and conversion into another religion. Though several laws have been passed, the divorce procedure in India is still complex and time taking. The judiciary in India largely believes that marriages should be safe and often grant expanded time span and provide access and control of the